Hey everybody, welcome to Fit Tip Tuesday. I feel like it's been a long time since I've been on my channel because I spent last weekend teaching two different classes, and one of them was my tank top class, and it ran through the whole Friday afternoon, so I didn't have my FabFit Friday last week. I am so sorry. I will be back on full schedule this week with a fun Fit Tip Tuesday today, and then a FabFit Friday on 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to show you how to create a lined crotch for your shorts underneath your skirt pattern. That's what I'll be working on Friday. Today I'm going to answer a subscriber's question about adjusting the width of the triangles or crotch wedges to get a better fit. This is a fun topic for me because I get to nerd out on pattern adjusting, because there's a number of ways that you can increase the width of the front and back wedges or crotch extension sections of your pattern. So the first thing is, I'm going to use a Sharpie marker and just show you these triangle areas that I'm talking about. So basically we're talking about this area right here. Okay, so I'm just going to make them in blue so you can kind of see the area that we're talking about. Okay, so we have the front and the back, and the reason why these areas are important is because they actually affect a couple different dimensions of your pants pattern. You can adjust these to change the total crotch length. You can adjust these to add more room at the inner thigh. You can adjust these to create more horizontal space at the base of your crotch. And it also gives you more room to wrap around your leg. So even if you don't have a prominent inner thigh, you may need a wider wedge to wrap around your leg if your shape needs it. For example, many times in the front leg, you might have a prominent front thigh. Now, a prominent front thigh is approximately right here. I drew this little oval to show you. And what happens is, if you have a curve on your front thigh, you need more fabric to go across the front leg. Okay, so what can happen in this instance is, if you don't have enough horizontal space, the front crotch point may be pulling the back crotch point forward, and it's creating wrinkles on your back leg. That's one issue that involves these crotch wedges. Another could be if you need more horizontal space. For example, if when you sit down, if the back of your muslin slides, sometimes adding to this vertical space helps that. Another thing is, if when you're wearing your pants, it feels snug along the curved part of the back, center back seam, that can be an indication that you need more depth in this wedge. So like from here to here, it may be too narrow and you don't have enough room between the center back seam and your inseam, and it's pulling there in the back. So there's a number of different fitting issues, and I'm sure there's a couple more that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. But basically, I like to call these the Bermuda Triangle, because there's no specific rules or measurements that you can use to dictate the actual dimensions of these two wedges. And the reason why I say that is because some of the reason why you may need to increase the width of them or decrease the width of them is because of your shape somewhere else, and you can't, and it isn't included in that measurement. So the first thing I want to do is talk about how you decide if you need to increase the front or the back wedge. And the best way to look at that is, if you look at this side view illustration that I drew, you can see that the side seam is bowing forward at the upper thigh level. That's a classic indication that there isn't enough width in the front wedge to wrap around your front leg to allow the front and back to meet properly. And so on the side, you'll see the side seam is not straight, and then in the back you may see these tight wrinkles. Okay, so you can see here I drew a back view with tight wrinkles. And that's not because, you know, in this case, it could be that you need more room in the back, but if the side seam is also pulling forward, that means it's the front that's too small. So the way you would increase this front wedge is, so like if you just draw yourself a little guideline from your inseam to the center front seam right above the curve, you can actually create a pivot, and the pivot is going to be where this dot is. Okay, so I'm going to create a pivot there, and I'm going to slash through the leg and also just through the front center front seam like this. What that allows me to do, let me just put a little green post-it note here. What that allows me to do is it allows me to open this up, and you can see now what I'm doing is I'm creating more width on the front leg to make room for a prominent front thigh. All right, so that's one way to adjust the front, okay, to create more room for a prominent front thigh. Okay, so you can see if we put these together now, I'll just cut this off. You can see that this now, you know, adds a little bit more width and you have more room there. And then the back crotch point won't pull forward. So that's the first way to adjust the wedge in the front. And that's usually because you have either a prominent inner thigh or a prominent front thigh. Adding room here will help with that. Let's say you need a bigger curve there because you have a prominent pubic area. Okay, that could be another issue. So if you have enough ease on your leg, you're going to just come back here and just dig yourself a deeper hole. And again, if the top, waist, and hip fits, you can then add it back in over here. Okay, so that's another issue if you have a prominent pubic area and you need a deeper front crotch curve. Okay, I like to say, you know, consider your front and back similarly. Okay, so for example, in the back you have your butt, and in the front you have your pubic bone area, and in the front it's a smaller adjustment because it's a smaller area that you're adjusting for, but the principles are the same. If you feel that your upper thigh is snug and you need more room at the top of your leg, and maybe you need room to sit, you need to increase your crotch length, or you feel like you need more horizontal space, or if it's pulling from, draw yourself a guideline from the inseam to just be, you know, just at the start of the curve. And I'm going to create that same pivot. So I'm going to just cut into the pattern here, cut through the pattern on my slash line. Okay, and then I'll get myself another green sticky note here. So I can spread the wedge like this. And you can see that we're adding width to the wedge, and we're adding more room. Okay, so if I true this up now, let me just true it up in black. All right, you can see that we've added more horizontal space. We've also added to the inseam because this green wedge really is pushing out the inseam that amount. So if you need room on your inseam, that's how you can add it. So what happens if it feels tight, but the leg is already fitting loosely? All right, because, you know, we can't push out the inseam if we don't need room on the inseam. And I'm just going to draw myself a little bit of a guide for like where it is right now. And I'm going to follow the center back seam here just so I can draw for you the crotch wedge. Okay, so right now that's how big it is from this dashed line over. Well, if we need to make it wider from here to here because it's tight, then the way we can do it without adding to the inseam is we can dig it back this way. So I can actually come in here and I can dig it back like this. Now if I do this, you can see that my wedge is now like this. So I've added all of this extra right here, okay, and that's going to give you more room. But I've also reduced the width of the hip because I continued, you know, I kept the shape of the back crotch. I just dug it out back here. So what you may need to do is add it back in on the side if it was fitting right. And just be careful with where you're adding it back because you want to stay above crotch level when you add, because if you start to add below crotch level, then you would be adding to the width of your leg. And again, if the leg already has enough ease, you don't want to do that. So this right here would be, you know, I'll just color this in. This is where we're adding back what we took out over here, okay, and then this is what we added over here, okay. So basically now we've added to this wedge to create more room. So that is a second way that you can add. So whether it's pushing your crotch point out, it adds more along your inseam, or keeping the inseam the same and pushing back, you know, pushing back the back edge of the crotch wedge. And what I'll do is I'll just cut this out so you can see what it looks like now. Just keep in mind, you can always do it in reverse as well. I find it a little bit less common that someone needs less room, but if you happen to be someone who has, let's say, a flat butt and you don't need as much horizontal space, the easiest thing to do then is just to trim it off. Okay, so you can trim off, you know, the top and then blend back into your original inseam and then just cut that off. Okay, so making it smaller, you don't have to slash and overlap. You can just trim it off like that. But in any case, whenever you make an adjustment to your crotch wedges, you really want to go back and make sure that you have a nice transition from front to back. So when I look at, let's look at these two versions. I'm going to match up the inseams, and when I say match up the inseams, I mean butt the inseams up next to each other for the first maybe 3 or 4 inches. What's going to happen is the bottom of the leg is going to overlap, but we want to just check this front to back transition, and I'm just going to cut it out here so you can really see what's happening. I'll just get rid of the zipper seam allowance for now. Let me just put a piece of so I'm going to put this here, and I'll just lay this one right next to it like this. All right, and you can see what I've done here is I've just matched up those inseams. Okay, and I'll just draw the inseam black so you can see what I'm talking about. You're just lining this edge up, okay, this black edge. Now, what you want to see when you do that is you want to see a nice smooth transition from front to back, okay? And actually, this is peeking up a little bit. So what I would do here is I would actually come in and just trim those little points to create a nice smooth transition from front to back. So you can see it's a very small amount that I trimmed off. I literally just trimmed off probably a 1/16 of an inch because this is a small scale pattern. But basically you want a nice smooth, oops. But basically you want a nice smooth transition from front to back like that. Okay. Now this does not address the shape of those crotch wedges in terms of the shape of the crotch curves. This is just to add or remove width to the crotch wedges in the front or back. All right, so that's how you adjust the front and back crotch wedges to either make them wider or narrower, and what to look for in terms of how to decide where to adjust your, where to adjust the wedge, either by pushing the point out or digging the back deeper. Okay, so if you have any questions or comments about that, please post them below and I will help you. I hope you enjoyed this little Fit Tip Tuesday, and I hope to see you on Friday when I show you how to make a lined crotch in your shorts for your skirt during FabFit Friday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And I also hope you have a very nice day. I'll see you soon.